Hey, heads up, Duckman from the future here. Just wanted to give you a warning. This video is about 45 minutes long, and there's a lot of stuff in this video that you really don't have to watch, like the actual temperature testing, unless, of course, you get a little bored and you want to sit through it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the little sections that are important that you probably should watch with an ad. So I'll go ahead and just click a little AdSense ad in that area. So if you'd like to fast forward to it, then those are the parts that are important. But otherwise, to summarize, I got some pretty good results from the testing, and I learned a couple things myself. So, stay tuned to watch this thing. I mean, watch it to the end if you can, every little bit of it. And tell me what you think. Share your thoughts down below. I really appreciate it. All right, let's roll the video. Dart. Welcome back to Duckman Cycles and VW Garage. I'm your host, the Duckman. Ha! We're back here with my Type 3, also known as Ruby, and she's a 1968 swing axle Type 3, and she's got a set of dual carburetors in there that were put on by the previous owner. Used to be fuel injected, but now it's got Delorto FRDs. That was actually done by the previous owner's mechanic just in order to sell it because he was having problems with the fuel injection. And when I got it, it was a mess, and I ended up tuning it, fixing it, and I got the carburetors running really good, but my weak spot was the linkage. So I've since replaced the linkage with the CB Performance kit on here, and that also included the air filters that you see on here, which are inside the engine compartment. Now, some people have given me a lot of grief about that, telling me that the engine's going to suck nothing but hot air and that it's going to lose a ton of horsepower in the process. So today, we're going to find out exactly how hot that air is, and we're going to do a little calculation as to exactly how much power loss I could expect from the engine due to the hotter air, if the air is hotter. And we're going to set up a couple of thermometers here. Here they are. I've got one for ambient temperature and one for engine temperature. Currently they are in sync. I don't know how accurate they are. It's showing 54 degrees Fahrenheit out here, and I think it's probably in the ballpark. It's a little brisk out here. It's a Florida cold morning. I'm from up north, so this doesn't seem very cold to me at all. Obviously, I'm wearing short sleeves, and if I really start digging into this car, I'm probably going to put shorts on. But yeah, 54 degrees is what we're looking at for ambient temperature currently. But what I need to do is I need to take one of these probes and put it down inside of the air cleaner. I want it inside of the air cleaner and not touching anything in that air cleaner. And that's gonna kind of be a little bit tricky. So I gotta improvise a way to make that happen. The reason why I want it inside the air cleaner is pretty simple. I don't want the radiant heat in the engine compartment hitting these sensors and actually driving them up higher than what the air temperature would. So they need to be in an enclosed area where the airflow, of course, what is going into the carburetor will be. So yeah, inside the air cleaner is gonna be the best place to put it. That'll encapsulate it and keep it away from any of the infrared light that'll be trying to heat these suckers up. Anyways, yeah, we're gonna throw that sucker together, and we gotta come up with a way to do it. So if you haven't already subscribed, you need to. I really need you guys to click the likey button on this video. Share it with your friends, because this is something that comes up in a lot of other places. So whatever the results are on this, you're going to probably want to share them with your friends. And as always, if you really do enjoy my videos, likey, and other bullshit like that. So anyways, thanks you guys for watching, and we'll be back after the intro. Alright, we're back. Now I gotta come up with a way to put this probe down somewhere in the engine compartment, and I want to put it inside the air cleaner. And I'm thinking the left one is probably going to be the better bet, because the left one is a lot easier to get the lid off of. There's a little more clearance area in here. And I'm thinking I could probably take this air cleaner and, using a little bit of baling wire, tie this probe so it sits in here kind of centered like that, floating in space, not touching the lid nor touching the base of the air cleaner, nor actually dipping into the throat of the carburetor, though I guess I could actually just stick it down on the carburetor itself. But I don't want it touching anything other than air, so it's going to be really difficult to get this thing suspended, and I think just a little bit of baling wire is probably going to do the trick. This air cleaner is retaining its shape pretty well because it is a little cold out here, so the plastic got hard on it, but normally it's this is much more floppy and flimsy than what you're seeing. Alright, let's see if we can wrap that up in some baling wire and just see what that does. And then, of course, I have to see if I can get that lid on the air cleaner onto this. And this is good because this wire here is actually, it's flat. It's not round. It's actually a flat wire. So I think I can just lay it right over here like this and not affect the seal too much. I think that'll work out. Okay, using some baling wire, I got that thing suspended in there, and it's going to affect my seal a little bit when I put the sucker down on the air cleaner, but I don't think it's going to hurt it too awfully bad, and we're only running it real briefly and temporarily anyway, but I think this is going to do the trick. Set it up just like this. We'll drop it in place. I'll put one of the bolts in like I had before, and the bolts aren't even going to touch the probe, which is another good thing. I didn't want that to happen because that could affect the temperature some. And we'll put the sucker right in here, just like this. There it goes. Put our bolt back in. Okay, and here's our probe wire. Now I need to figure out where I'm going to be able to put the thermometer at now that I've got the probe wire. And I think in the ideal location is probably going to be in the car underneath the rear window. There's a nice shelf back there that I can set something else up at. But I think in order to get up there, I might have to drill a little hole in the engine compartment maybe, or maybe I could pass it up through one of the rust holes or something. That certainly will get it far enough. Okay, we're going to improvise and see what we can come up with. Okay, in the engine compartment here, I ran that wire for the probe right through a hole, rather, that was in the lid by factory. And I'm not sure why they're there. They probably buttoned something in place, like a piece of insulation. That's missing currently. But I widened the hole just a little bit with a drill bit, so that way that plug could pass through. And then up here, where the hinge spring attaches to the body, there was a hole. So I pulled that up through there. And inside of the car over here, right on the rear package area, you can see the two thermometers, and I put the one probe right out here in the window, right out the window in the airstream, so that way whatever air is currently blowing past this, which of course will measure the ambient temperature. Back in the car here we have our thermometers, and they're both currently reading 55 degrees Fahrenheit, so they are in sync, and consistency was the key. We want them to be as close as possible. And they appear to be, so I think we're going to be good in that department. Got the GoPro set up right here. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to do an idle test. So let's go ahead and just see just how hot the air gets in the engine compartment with everything closed and shut down just as it would be factory stock right after we fire up our GoPro. Okay, there it is. Currently running a time lapse, which is incorrect. Temperatures are not changed yet. Shows 55 and 54. Ambient temperature is actually a hair lower. Alright, we're going to let it keep going. Alright, engine compartment is closed up, and we're going to close the deck lid too. Still got everything hooked up and running. And I'm going to pull this thing out of the garage, just so this garage doesn't fill up with exhaust fumes. Not that it really matters a whole lot, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's running a little choppy, obviously, because I've just started it up. But time check on my busted phone says 1:26 p.m. So we're going to see just how warm it gets and how quickly. Of course, it's well, you hear it right now. It's starting to come up a little bit. But I'm going to let it run just a bit more, let it get nice and warm. Which is typically what I do anyways before I drive this thing, because it's just, it's cold-blooded. It likes to get warm before it wants to really drive. One of the problems is the FRD carburetors don't have chokes built into them, so usually you have to goose the throttle a whole lot in order to get the thing going. And then once it starts idling, which is what it's doing now, it does a pretty good job of heating up by just let it sit. Alright, back in a little bit. Okay, we're still idling out here, and we've been running for, my busted-ass phone says 1:48. That's about 23 minutes. Just idling, just idling. The back of the car is starting to get a little warm. That's normal when it just sits. And our current ambient temperature is 57, so it came up a little bit out here, and 111 in the engine compartment. Now, I expected that because this car is sitting idle, so all the hot air is sitting above it right now. Now, what's going to happen is we're going to take it for a ride, and we're going to see exactly how much the temperature changes. It might go up because of the increased load, or maybe to go down because the cold air enters the engine compartment. Let's see what happens. Anyway, that was a bad test. We're gonna have to try that one again. One of the heater hoses actually popped off, and it was kind of blowing half into the exhaust and half not. It was causing the right-hand side, not where the temperature thing is at, but actually the right-hand side was overheating. So the ambient temperature, well, the engine compartment temperature is actually up, elevated above where it's supposed to be. So I put the hose back in as best I could, and I'm limping it home real carefully right now. So anyway, we're gonna try that test again as soon as we get home, when we get that hose fixed, and we'll take it back out again one more time after that. Didn't think I was gonna get it right the first time, but I didn't expect it to be something else. Okay, this is the heater hose that I was using down below on here. It comes out of the air shroud and blows right down into the exhaust heater box right there. The OEM parts unfortunately don't work with this because it does have an aftermarket merged header exhaust. So I had to actually improvise, and I had to use, well, it's actually just a Beetle heater hose. They're a carburetor preheater tube. I mean, it's all the same stuff. But I pushed it down inside of there, and while I was driving, it popped out. And I pushed it back in the best I could, but the header down there is so damn hot, and I can't put my hand in there even carefully without getting too close to the pipe. And, you know, I don't want to risk getting burnt. So I'm going to let that cool down just a little bit, and now we're going to put this hose back in. But this has actually been a problem. Every time it pops out, I notice that there's a smell, and it's just a smell of metal starting to get hot. I know right away that there's an overheating issue beginning to occur. Anyway, I managed to get the hose in there, and I limped it home, and I don't even smell it anymore, so it got enough cooling air that it kept it cool, but the engine compartment did heat up to hotter than what it would normally be, because of which. So, what we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and rest the car a little bit, get it cool, pop the hose back in there, and there's actually the old heater tube that I took off of it, and get that resituated, fixed, and we'll take it back out again and record the temperatures once again. I don't think we're going to have a baseline temperature both at about 57 degrees anymore, because, you know, the temperature out here has come up. It's actually a little warmer than it was a little while ago. It was showing 61 roughly. Really nice day today. Really, it's really nice out here. A little breezy. It's just beautiful. But engine compartment temperature when I stopped was at 115. And that's hot, but really not excessively, really not too bad. But the engine compartment temperature was about 115, and that's with it overheating. You know, so things were not right. It was blowing out cooling air. This is actually a leak, if you will. It was leaking cooling air, and cooling air is, well, in an air-cooled engine, that's your lifeblood. So the less air it gets, the more it's going to overheat. And I will say that the right side for certain was overheating, and the left side is going to follow, because if it's leaking air there, this side's not going to get quite as much as it needs either. All right. Let them sit, let them cool down. We'll come back to it in a little bit. All right, I got our tube back on there. I think we're fixed. I didn't clamp it because they friction fit, and they actually feel really welly, really welly. Welly's a word. Boy, I make up more words when I do my YouTube than anything else here. Anyways, they are very, very well pressed into place. They kind of just stick. There's supposed to be a clamp that actually goes around this, but the tube fits inside of that quite well and gives you a really, really good seal. All right, let's go ahead and go with that, and let's see what we got. All right, I rearranged everything back here too because there was too much stress on the wire over here on this one. That's the engine one. There's way too much stress on it. So I put the angle iron on top of the mat that's over here to hold it down to stop putting so much stress on that wire. Alright, we're not exactly, both thermometers aren't exactly cooled down to where they're supposed to be, but we're going to go with it. Well, the temperature was up 108 degrees when I started to put the fresh GoPro battery in here. There it goes. Must have had a loose connection or something over here. You know what? It's breezy out here. There's a possibility that the breeze of cars passing and the wind blowing could be enough to, yeah, actually it did change the temperature. Just a little bit. A big truck just passed. And it was 108 just a moment ago. Let's see if the RPMs on the engine changes at all. No, not really. Alright, it's mirror image in the screen I'm looking at here, but it looks like it's about 91, and I'm just starting to go, so let's see if it goes up or down. We're gonna watch that and see exactly what happens. Right now I got a cross breeze. Feel it coming in the window. It made the temperature drop even more. we're sitting and waiting at a traffic light for everybody to move. Yes, it's right turn on red, but nobody's going. And that's where I need to go. I need to make that right turn. I was looking in the mirror again at the temperatures, and I noticed when it was about 59 degrees, the temperature dropped to about 68 while moving at about 60 miles an hour. So that's only 9 degrees over ambient temperature. I would say it's going to be certainly most efficient while the car is running at speed, which is probably when it's really most important. It has been breezy. Cross breezes will affect the temperature while it's sitting and idling. If it's in a stagnant area like it was in my backyard, it'll get hot. It'll get hot quick. We're going again. Go back to budgeted temperatures. Peckerhead. That old lady doesn't want to go. Come on, you old bitch. There's nobody in your lane. You can turn and make your fucking right. It's yield, not a stop. What are you, a fucking Zsa Zsa Gabor? Get the fuck out of the way. And then she makes an illegal right-hand turn, which she changes the lane in the middle of while turning. And it turns out it's an old man, not an old lady. And the douchebag goes out in front of me. Well, at least he got out of the way. Alright, well. Okay, we're running it up inside the shed again, and we're watching that temperature come up. And you see we're in an enclosed area where that breeze So I'm sitting here in my garage tent trying not to asphyxiate myself, but I'm in an enclosed area where there's no breeze blowing on me. This is to test the ambient temperature as to what it's going to be without the wind blowing on it in the street. And I'm watching it come up very, very quickly. 106. These are temperatures that I just could not get it to do while it was out in the street. 108. Yeah, it's climbing real fast. So that little bit of breeze that you get, just a little breeze, and I don't know what the weather is, but I have the weather report inside, and we're going to actually need that to do the calculation. But that little bit of breeze actually makes a huge difference in the engine compartment temperature. You get to 111 right now. It's going right back up to where it was when we started earlier today. Yeah, it's still at 111. Happens if we give it some reps. It's going to go up any? Actually, it made it go down a little bit. I don't have a hypothesis as to why that is. Maybe the fan moved a little faster, it moved a little more air around. I really don't know, but it says 109 right now. But anyways, we're going to go inside and we're going to evaluate this data, and I'm going to try to write up a little idea as to what I think happened here today, and do the math and do the formulas and find out exactly how much power loss there is due to excessive, with double quotes, excessive heating of the air in the engine compartment, which the carburetors are drawing in. So we're going to find out. Going to be interesting. We'll be back in a few. Okay, we're back, and thanks for sticking with me through that long video. That was a lot of rigorous testing. I did a lot of driving around with speeds anywhere from completely stopped, sitting in traffic, to driving over speed bumps, stopping and going at stoplights, stop signs, darting around other cars, driving up to about 50, 60 miles an hour, which wasn't to my surprise. That's actually when the car was the coolest. When it was hottest was, of course, when it idled, or when it was idling in a area where it was confined, I guess you could say, like it was in a garage, or when it was parked close to the fence. That's where the hot air would have a tendency to build up because it couldn't get out. You know, it was kind of in a trapped area, so the engine would run significantly hotter. It would jump from about 80, 90 degrees to 120 is the maximum temperature that I had seen. So, I mean, that was a big difference in heat just because of where the car was sitting. But as soon as I cut the car down to the street and it had a breeze blowing on it, it would actually idle right around 88, 90 degrees. It would sit right there. And when the breeze would pick up, and I had a pretty good crosswind today coming out of the north. It's actually kind of cold outside right now. It's like 40 degrees. So yeah, Florida cold. Of course, it's colder where you are. I'm sure it's colder where you are. But, you know, I'm from the north, so it wasn't all that bad. When it got a good cross breeze, the car would just be sitting there, and I'd watch the temperature drop down to the low 80s. It was just sitting there, and it would blow right through the wheel wells, and I guess come out the other side, and it would drop down to the low 80s, and the thing would then gradually heat back up till the next breeze, and it would come back down again. And it was remarkable how quickly that air would change that temperature. But while accelerating, and this was kind of a surprise to me, while accelerating, the temperature would either stay stagnant or it would actually come up a couple degrees, just a couple. And then as you would start to plane off and you would hit your speed limit is when the temperature would start to drop down rather quickly and then settle to a much lower temperature. It never did actually hit the ambient temperature. It never got that low, and I didn't expect it to. I know the engine compartment is going to have some kind of heat in it, but I did get it as close as about 6 degrees from above ambient temperature. And the ambient temperature did fluctuate a little bit. I saw it as low as 57 and as high as, I think, 66, but that was because the, and I should have thought of this before, but because the temperature sensor for the ambient was actually exposed to sunlight. So when I would turn and the car would be facing the sun on that direction, the sun would hit it and it would raise the temperature of it a bit. But yeah, it was actually 57 degrees outside, so I think that's pretty fair and safe to call it that. However, the ambient temperature did go up when it was in the garage, and it jumped up about 10 degrees, just the same as the engine got hotter in the engine compartment. But that air was, once again, it was getting recycled, and all that hot air was coming out from underneath the car and coming up to the temperature sensor for the ambient air, and throwing that off. So anyways, we're going to sit down at the desk and we're going to do a little mathematic calculations here with figure out exactly just how much horsepower that equates to that I've lost from this heat inside the engine compartment. And I'm saying lost very lightly because I've got a feeling that the results are going to be quite surprising to both you and me. So let's get to punching in the computer and see what we get. And thanks for watching, you guys. And like I said, once again, thanks for sticking through this whole video. This was a long one. I really appreciate it. And we'll be back in a second. Okay, we've got a lot of data that we've collected here. We need to put it together to determine exactly what these numbers mean. So let's go ahead and go to the engine tuning calculator, which is found on the Shellquist Engineering website. This is a really good calculator. I've used this a couple times to just figure out a few equations. It's a lot easier than doing the math by hand. And while I've never checked his calculator, I'm going to assume, and I hate to do that, but I'm going to assume that he's built this thing correctly since it's been on the website for so long and I've used it for so long, that it's going to produce accurate numbers. But anyway, going with the best case scenario today, going with ambient temperatures, let's just say my car did actually pull in air that was not heated whatsoever. The air temperature would be at 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the absolute pressure of the air, I have that because my front door security camera actually records the weather, too. I put that in there as a little perk. I actually programmed it all myself. I just wanted to see what the weather is when I'm recording people walking around outside. So, I don't know, it gives me a little sense of what it feels like outside and why people may be behaving differently than I would believe them to be doing otherwise. Back on topic here. The pressure was 1020.2 millibars, and yep, that's already selected. The dew point is in Fahrenheit and is 36 degrees. So if we calculate that, boom, our relative horsepower is 105.1. That's right, a whopping 105.1. So it's better than 100%. Why is it better than 100%, you say? And that's rather surprising because the SAE Certified Power Standards document, which is SAE J1349, for those of you that want to look it up, actually sets the baseline at 77 degrees Fahrenheit, 990 millibar, and 0% relative humidity. So that would give you 100%. So these conditions are actually better than their standards. So this is an optimal weather condition today for as far as how the car should be running and the temperature of the air going into it. So this, if I could get the air to that temperature, essentially the engine would be running at 105.1%. Now, what does that turn into as far as calculation is concerned? Well, I did the math already, and the answer is my 64 horsepower engine, which I didn't even know had that much horsepower, actually did an electronic dyno building an engine with the similar specifications as my engine has, and turned out it actually made about 64 horsepower instead of the roughly 50 that I thought it had. But my bolt-ons actually made a huge difference because I removed a lot of the stock Volkswagen restrictive intakes and exhausts, which just really made a huge difference on a Volkswagen. But anyway, 64 turned out to be my base, and today we're making 3.26 horsepower greater because of these optimal conditions. Now, I did not actually take in a temperature of 57 degrees at the intake. The lowest I ever recorded was about 66, and the highest I ever recorded was about 120 while it was idling. Now, 120 disappeared very quickly as soon as the car started moving. In fact, it dropped down to about 88, 90, somewhere in there. And it held pretty flat, right in the mid-80s, I would say. Mid-80s, low 80s even, sometimes even the high 70s. So I would say the temperature swung anywhere from between, I'd say, 6 degrees over whatever the ambient temperature is up to 30, and this is when the car was rolling, not when it was just sitting. When it was actually just sitting and in a constricted area, the temperature 120 degrees came up rather quickly, but it did not want to go any higher than that. It actually stayed right about there, but that's when it was recycling air. When the car was sitting close to the fence in the backyard with the garage on one side of it, they kind of held air in a little pocket there, and it caused the engine air temperature, the engine compartment temperature, to actually go up considerably. So let's just say for some reason that the only air from the engine compartment is going to be 120 degrees. So we're taking worst case scenario here, just absolutely worst case. The pressure is still the same, the dew point is still the same because weather conditions have not changed. And let's calculate that. Boom, 98.2% relative horsepower. Now if we take those same horsepower numbers, 64, and we multiply it times 0.982, that means my engine today, at 120 degrees intake, was running at 68, I'm sorry, let's repeat that. It was running at 62.8 horsepower. So it lost about 1 point, not even 1.2, 1.16 horsepower was lost today because I have air cleaners inside my engine compartment when the temperature was at 120 degrees. The engine was not always at 120 degrees. It was only there for very short instances. So this is actually around 1 horsepower loss while idling in a place where the air was getting recycled. And actually, it was when the engine was overheating even due to that heater hose problem that I was having. The temperatures came down significantly from that once the car was in the street and the breeze could hit it. And it was a really nice breeze coming in today. It wasn't exceptionally hard, but it was like 11.5 miles an hour according to what I'm looking at here in my front door update. Yeah, it was pretty significant, especially when the breeze blew crossways across the car, when it can go through one wheel and out the other side. That made the most difference, and I'm not really surprised at all because that's the easy way for the air to pass through. The engine compartment on a Type 3 is not sealed. The engine itself is sealed, and the cold air blows over the engine in this sealed container. But outside of that, everything is actually wide open, and the cooling air can get in there, and it will cool down the engine compartment. Now let's just say today, we're going to take some of these numbers, and while we were rocking and rolling at about 65 miles an hour when I was cruising through the city here, yeah, by the way, I was speeding like crazy, passing a lot of cars, and you probably shouldn't do what I did today, but I was running temperatures about 88 degrees, and it was pretty good right around the mid-80s, but I saw 88 come up a lot, and that 88 is real easy to see in your rearview mirror, and you know what 88 is because it looks the same frontwards and backwards. And let's calculate it. That's still 101.5%. Now let me remind you, I don't drive this car much in the summer. I only drive it once in a while, actually to tech session, because it's just too friggin' hot. It has no air conditioning on it. You stick to the seats. It's just an incredibly uncomfortable ride in the summertime. But as soon as it starts to cool down, come September, you know, the car comes out and it rocks and it rolls for about 7 or 8 months. And then once we get that sweltering, nasty hot summer, it gets parked again. But let's just say, for an example, for some reason, I'm going to be driving it to tech session. And tech session typically goes on in the morning, and typically I come home later in the afternoon when it's starting to cool down. But we're going to give it a ridiculous air temperature, and this is just a for instance. Let's say we're right at 90 degree heat. Florida, and this is Pensacola. Pensacola, 90 degrees is pretty standard. It will go higher than that, but it's not common, but we'll go higher than that. But just for argument, we're going to say it's right about 90 degrees. Now, the dew point is always way up. It's usually really hot and sticky and nasty, sweaty outside, but let's just go ahead and give that, you know, like an 85. You know, it's damn near a fog, damn near raining, but the pressure is up high enough that it's not actually going to rain. In fact, we could just drop that just a bit just because. Let's say it's 1,000 millibar a day. It's actually going to start dropping because it's going to rain soon. The dew point is way up, and yeah, you got the idea here. So let's calculate that. Boom! 95% relative horsepower is still available to me here. Yeah, okay, that's on a hot day with 90 degrees going into the engine intake. Now, if it's 90 degree ambient temperature and we were roughly pushing 20 to 30 degrees over that, let's go ahead and push that up to 30 degrees and take a worst case scenario, once again, that we're taking 120 degrees while cruising into the engine. That's still 92.1 horsepower. So I'm still pushing 60 horsepower in that engine, which is fine. I mean, I'm just cruising around the city. You know, the engine's not overheating. It's running well. I'm not drag racing it. I'm not trying to pull a trailer or going up steep hills or running the engine extremely hard. I actually, well, I mean, I do rough it up a little bit, but I don't race it. You know, I just don't race it. So I think that, according to my calculations here that I'm looking at, that today's adventure in testing this car and discovering that the relative horsepower with the temperatures that's going into it is actually higher than that of what the engine was rated for, tells me that my bolt-ons that I put on there are actually advantageous, and for the little bit of power that I may lose from the warm air that goes into the engine compartment isn't enough to discount that of the horsepower that was gained by the upgrades that I added. Yeah, I could probably do better also if I added a cold air intake, and yeah, it would be significant, but it's not going to be significant enough to feel. It's just not. It's absolutely not. I think the only way I would really be losing a lot more horsepower is if the temperature went up way up, like it started to overheat again, if the air pressure went way down because it's going to start raining, or if the dew point was way up something crazy high, and you know, the weather was just really, really bad conditions in the middle of summer. But again, I don't take the car out in rain. That's not what happens. The car stays at home and only goes to tech sessions on the weekends, typically during the summer. And during the winter and the colder months is when I drive the rest of the year. And I enjoy it those months because guess what? I don't stick to the seat. So all in all, I'm quite happy and satisfied with the numbers here that we've got. And it's rather interesting. So, you know, I hope you guys learned something. I know I did. And I really appreciate you guys for watching this. So let's go ahead and close out this video. So anyways, yeah, those results were rather surprising to me. I mean, I still can't believe it myself that the car is actually producing better than the rated horsepower. Of course, that's assuming that the engine has absolutely no wear on it, and that it was built properly, and that the valves are adjusted correctly, and, you know, everything else as far as the engine being perfect. I mean, that's best world situation stuff. But it's actually producing in this weather with the engine, with the air filters inside the engine compartment, better than the rated horsepower expected on it. Despite the air cleaners having been moved to the inside of the engine compartment and the air being drawn from in there, just not coming from the outside world, the car is actually producing better horsepower than stock because of my bolt-on upgrades, and I didn't realize that it made that kind of horsepower. So I gotta say, I'm rather happy with the car, and I'm quite happy with the numbers that turned out of it. And once again, for you naysayers that don't like it, you know, I'm sorry, the numbers are there, and if I calculated something wrong, and it was probably in the calculator that I used online and not so much my fault. I mean, I'll do the math on it if I have to do it by hand, but I'd rather you guys do the math. You do the math. If something's wrong there, and you post it in the comments. Anyway, so for now, like, comment, subscribe, pluck the little dingle belly you see down there next to the subscribe button. Don't forget to check out Duckman Cycles VW Garage up on the Facebook group page, and if you'd like to email me, duckmancycles@duckshit.net. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back again soon. Take care. Bye.